What is happening, Post Shifters? Welcome back to another episode of the Post Shift Podcast. Of course, I'm your host, Shawn Soole. It is the final episode, even though we're going live today, but it is the final episode of January's Outlook. If you've been following along, every January I try and do like an Outlook feature of different people who can give us some insights into where we're leading into 2026, reflect a little bit on 2025, clicking buttons because I'm a solo producer. And sort of like really lean into what we should be doing in 2026, because my big mantra, and I've been shouting this for about 6 months now, well, a long time, but last 6 months has really been focused on like, let's leave the industry better than what we came into it. And Kris from Burnout Project is really someone who I've been following for a long time on social media, and I'm very lucky that I've got him on the show. About mental health in the hospitality industry. And if you have listened to or seen any of my shit on social media, it's all about mental health as much as possible, because I think we need to talk about it more and more every single day. So I'm really looking forward to this chat with Kris. Kris, welcome. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you ever so much for having me. Yeah, first podcast of the year, so
lovely.
Might be a little bit rusty.
I'll be gentle. So take me back to the very beginning. Like, what's your background that led to you starting the Burnt Chef project?
Good question. Very good question. So my background is a bit of I say checkered, but when you say checkered, you automatically think it's a really...
You're in prison.
I was in prison. Could you imagine me in prison, a well-spoken Englishman? Hello, good afternoon. So my background, I dropped out of college and went into sales from the age of like 16, 17. And so I've worked in sales and marketing in a variety of different sectors. Like, I was working for an insurance company for 4 years, and I worked for TV Hi-Fi, back when plasmas first came out, and MP3 players weren't a thing, and neither were DVD players back then, so it shows my age. And I always found it fascinating about people and human psychology from that element. And I don't have a formal or professional background in that at all, but I just, for my brain, it worked to work with people. But during those periods of time, I always had jobs in bars and nightclubs in Bournemouth and the south coast of England, where I'm originally from. And I loved it. Again, it was fun. Working in those environments was fast paced. It was adrenaline fueled. I would finish work at 5 p.m. at a finance company, and then go and work from 6 till 3 o'clock in the morning until my feet were sore. So I was doing, like, we talk about long shifts in hospitality, but I was doing sometimes 17, 18, 19-hour days, going home to sleep, and then I'd be back for the open on the Sunday, and then go back to work on Monday for my 9 to 5. So fell in love with it. And I moved from Bournemouth to Somerset, and I was looking for a job nearer to myself. And my sister-in-law said, well, look, I work for a food wholesaler, come and work with me. And I was like, well, you work with chefs. I've never spoken to a chef. The only chef I spoke to once, when I went into a kitchen, shouted at me. He was like, it's fine. So I started working in food wholesale probably about 14 years ago. And I fell in love with it from just, I fell in love back with hospitality again. And I remember walking into a Michelin star kitchen, and it was one of my first appointments, and being a young male, quite cocky, a bit of a sales background. I was like, right, where's this chef then? Like, get him out here. I'm going to introduce myself. And everyone was in their whites, and they were there chopping away. And it was like a scene from a Disney film, and they look up. When there's a mouse coming out of the hole, and there's a cat waiting, and everyone's going, don't do it. And the chef came out, and he was like, who the fuck are you? What are you doing? And like, manhandled me out the kitchen. And I went back to the office, licking my wounds. And I said to my boss, like, what's wrong with this guy? And he was like, well, what time did you go in? I was like, 12:30. And he was like, you idiot. You never walk into a kitchen at 12:30. And so I was like, wow, I'm so curious, the level of professionalism and everything. And I just fell in love with it. And I realized that in order to have a successful career in this side of sales, I needed to know about my customers. I needed to know about the sector. I needed to know like where truffles came from and what different varieties there were, and modern gastronomy and different types of mixology, so that when I walked into those environments, I wasn't just seen as a bit of a Jack the Lad, but I actually was able to inspire and work with my clients to either inspire them or elevate what they were doing and work with them. So naturally, during that period of time, I built some really close relationships, and I started talking, as you do when I'm stood in kitchens near the pass, about the challenges of working in hospitality. And I was like, how do you guys work 60, 80-hour weeks? And they were like, well, what other way would you work? And I went, well, in my background, in my office environment, I would have someone who comes and adjusts my chair for me, or checks my monitors the right height, or make sure that my wrists aren't sore from clicking mice. And, you know, I would have to have an hour's break, and I'd have to have afternoon breaks. And they were like, well, this is hospitality. We don't get any of that stuff. And I was like, well, how do you cope? And so the stories about drug use, alcohol use, high divorce, burnout, the culture, they were coming through, and I was like, we could do so much better. We can do something more sustainable, and without building an industry on the broken bones and the backs of individuals who work in it. And mental health was something that kept coming up, and it wasn't until I had a bit of a long story short, I had an identity crisis when I was about 17, and probably even earlier than that, 15. And I learned to mold myself into what other people expected me to be. I was a comedian, right? I didn't have any viewpoints. I wasn't strong in my viewpoints. I wasn't able to say no, which is, I think, something that a lot of hospitality professionals will resonate with, right? And unfortunately, it internalized, and for 2 years, it made me very, very sick, very ill. And I firsthand had to experience what it was like to A, not know what was going on with me, and B, not knowing where to look for help, and then having the stigma associated with what happens if someone thinks I'm broken or I'm damaged. Or, you know, even when I found a therapist who was a good hour away from work and a good hour away from home. And when I got out the car, I was looking to check that I hadn't been followed. And so my background of sales and working in hospitality and falling so deeply in love with this fantastic sector and this profession from all sides, from housekeeping all the way through to chefing, I suddenly was keen to try and leave it in a better, like you said at the beginning, leave it in a better way than I found it. And so, yeah, that was my background, and I guess a bit of a backstory is as to the catalyst that led me to do where I am now.
It's fascinating that, like, I knew you had background in the industry, but now that you've told the story, that you were sort of industry adjacent, and you could see the issues that we have in the industry without actually being like boots on the ground in that sort of way. And like, that's a telling sign that I've been saying the industry's been broken for a really long time. And I talk about people saying kids don't work as hard as we did back in the day. I'm like, they shouldn't. Like, shouldn't they be working less than we did back in the day? Should they be sacrificing a little bit less than we did? But when you started rolling this out, what year did you start rolling out Burnt Chef?
So the initial idea was 2019, and the Burnt Chef project, in its very name and essence, was a photography campaign. Because I during my recovery, I found photography to be like a great mindfulness exercise. You could focus on the tiniest little detail of the world or the biggest landscape, and it would take you out of your own head. And when I was trying to talk to people once I'd recovered from my mental illness about mental health and mental illness and looking after yourselves, I got told the same thing. Like, we don't talk about that.
We don't talk about that.
No.
Here's a shot. We don't talk about it. Here's a shot of whiskey.
That's literally the response I got, which is, I was like, well, how do you cope? And they were like, well, 6 pints or or other things, uppers to bring you up and downers to bring you back down again. And I'm like, but that's unsustainable. And I know that for myself, having been through that myself as well. And so because I couldn't get people to speak because of fear of stigma or shame or losing their job, I was like, well, let me just take a photo of you, black and white photo, just to say that we all have mental health. It doesn't have to mean that you're mentally ill or unwell, but share the photo and hopefully it will encourage someone else to get talking. And so that's all the Burn Chef project was. It was just me taking some photos, raise a little bit of awareness in the local town I was from, and that was my mark on the world. That was something that I could do that might help generate conversation. Yeah.
So 2019, like that was just pre-pandemic. Do you feel the pandemic? I feel like it could have been more, but do you feel like the pandemic like flicked a bit of switches and got people talking about this? Because then it wasn't necessarily just mental health around your work and your industry and your job. All of a sudden it switched over to, oh, I've got bad mental health in my whole life. It's just that I've been compartmentalizing this pre-pandemic, and now all of a sudden the pandemic's here and I have to work from home or I'm stuck at home. Do you feel like the switch and the catalyst of it growing into a proper like mental health organization really happened during the pandemic?
I think it happened pre-pandemic.
Okay.
So I did my first talk in October 2020. My first talk to October 2019, and I stood up in a room of about 65 people and just spoke about my experiences, and everyone was like, yeah, this is a real problem and this is something that we resonate with and we want to see something happen with this. We want to see change. And so I realized that a photography campaign was great for awareness, but all it was doing was shining a light on the issue. What I needed was something that was pragmatic and structured to help. So I started a clothing brand before the pandemic, expected to sell to friends and family. And all it was a couple of t-shirts and a few wristbands just to raise a conversation. And they started popping up before the pandemic in different parts of the UK. And I was like, well, this is cool. We're starting to raise a bit of funds that we're putting behind support systems and training. But then the pandemic happened and stimulus came in and people were sat at home. And that clothing started to pop up in the exec chef of the Tokyo embassy, the British embassy in Tokyo, was wearing a shirt, and then South Africa and Chicago and Sydney, and people started reaching out on social media. We were growing by like 1,000 followers a month, and I was like, shit, this is a global issue. And then during that time, there was some really interesting things. One, yes, I think a lot of people with a mass global pandemic, one that the world hasn't seen since the Spanish flu, right? Anxiety was high, financial concerns were massive. It was a real, for lack of a better word, it was a traumatic period of many of our lives. But the other thing that was interesting was the stories that came out of COVID, which really helped solidify the institutionalized nature of hospitality in many cases, which was people saying, I'm unwell because I'm at home with my family and I have time off and I don't know what to do with myself. I am missing the stress. I'm missing the buzz of a service, whether it's front of house or back of house. And that for me was like, Christ, people have adapted to this incredible sector, but now they don't know what to do with themselves when work-life balance, or they have that time off and they can hear the birds in the trees. And I was like, so it would definitely helped exacerbate things. I think it probably fast-forwarded the work that we did by, I would say, 5 to 10 years. But it made the work also a lot more frantic and a lot harder, because coming out of that, everyone wanted support or education or to learn more about themselves or other people. And I had to get my skates on and try and cope with that, really.
It's interesting that your merchandise sort of popped off, because we wear Burnout and I worked 18 hours as a badge of honor, and now we're literally wearing merch that says, hey, by the way, I'm burnt out as fuck. like I'm realizing that I'm at this position, and I'm gonna wear merch to say that I need to figure out my own thing. It's like a little switch in our brain.
Well, it shows the power of a movement, and it shows actually that this was bubbling along, probably 20, 30 years before I came along. And society has evolved, and we've learned to use more language to describe different ways that we feel. But it just needed unlocking, and the merchandise was a great way of generating that conversation and awareness on such a mass scale and so quickly, whilst also as an organization generating revenue that allowed us to give us the starting platform to be able to reinvest and actually go, right, let's make this something that's a generational shift and make sure it's cast iron. And the merch still continues to travel now. Like, the most interesting thing about the merchandise is when I pulled up at a Starbucks last year, and I've got a ute or a truck, right? It's not a massive thing and it's secondhand, but it's got the Burnt Chef Project written all over it. Like, it's a big black truck. And the guy handed me my coffee and he said, Burnt Chef Project. He was like, the tweezers that you guys do are amazing. I used to be a chef, but now I'm a barista. And I was like, great. I was like, do you know what where the money goes? And he was like, no, I just thought it was a really cool brand and I like it a lot. And I was like, you do realize we provide like free global therapy and like education to quite literally tens of thousands. He's like, no, I do. I just thought it was really cool. And so like we also have that education bit to do with it as well.
So when it comes to education, and you were speaking about like your first talk back in October 2019, I feel sometimes there is still a disconnect that we seem to be penetrating the younger generation and people who are more self-aware in their 30s. I'm in my 40s, getting into my late 40s now. Like, I've been very, very open with my mental health over the last decade. Do you still feel like there's a disconnect between what staff want and what operators want and need to facilitate proper mental health awareness inside their organizations?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think we need to preface that question by saying hospitality has historically worked on the same way. It's worked on high impact, high passion, high drive, but long hours, often high turnover. And as a result of that, we haven't really known any other way of operating, right? So when it comes down to education, I think operators want and owners want to do the right things. They want to look after their staff. We're all about looking after people. That is hospitality, that's service. No one's ever trained us. Like, I had 3 years of management training at the age of 21, how to conduct reviews and how to do interviews and how to do disciplinaries and stuff like this. I don't know many managers within hospitality that have gone through like an 18, 24-month program on how to be a manager. That combined, you've also got tight profit margins and a changing economy, and also really, really demanding schedules, which means often enough you're in fight or flight as an owner or a manager. So I think education has a really, really strong point. And I think that there is a big shift happening now with operators going, okay, if we want to retain our workforce and keep hold of them and make sure that they're with us in 5 years' time, because the cost of re-recruiting and hiring is so high, then we need to look at what they need as individuals and how we can work with them to be able to support them. But that's a generational thing, because you're right, the younger generation are coming in going, well, I'm aware of what anxiety and depression is, and how are you going to support me with my neurodiversity? But we now need to try and catch that up with the education from an operator side of things to go, that's okay, we have reasonable adjustments in the workplace, we have the right policies, we're flexible with that, here's how we've worked with other people. And those are the sort of things that take time to learn, but ultimately are invaluable for any organization to keep hold of their people.
Do you feel like you've seen that evolve and change in the last six years or 7 years now, with leadership teams and ownership, to sort of, like, as you were saying, like, it's nice to sort of theorize that this is going to happen. I talk about training quite a lot, and so that and my retention thing and overturn. Like I think people don't understand turnover quite as much as they probably should in hospitality. It's just like, oh, we lost a busser, we'll just replace them. I'm like, that's $2,500. Oh, we lost a bartender, we'll just replace them. That's $4,000. Oh, we lost a manager, we'll just replace. That's $6,500. Like, do you feel like boots on the ground there? Like 7 years from now, you're seeing a definite shift towards the understanding of it all?
Yeah, definitively yes. One thing I had to come to terms with a couple of years ago is I thought that I could be able to fix this problem in 3 years.
Yeah. Oh God, I know how that feels. I know exactly how that feels.
I could, you know, when you have a vision, right, and you can see it so clearly, and you know, I know what great looks like from my perspective, and listening to the views of others, because ultimately this isn't Kris Hall dictates what hospitality should be like. This is listening, understanding, gathering feedback, research, data. And I thought, well, the solutions are simple enough. Like, we provide every single solution mostly around the globe that people need in order to be able to make effective and sustainable cultures and keep hold of people. But what I didn't bank on was we're dealing with one of the largest industries in the world, plus multiple different styles of businesses, mom and pop restaurants, you know, massive multinational chains, etc. And that's humbled me quite significantly, because I realized this is a generational shift. And so we are seeing changes. We are seeing organizations who are putting their team members through apprenticeships and ongoing learning pathways. I mean, last year alone, we trained 70 colleges face-to-face. And we're not just talking in the UK, Sydney, Auckland, Joburg, Durban, and all across the States, including the Culinary Institute of America. So we're talking about mental health and culture and stress to these young students. But more than that, we're seeing organizations who want to educate themselves, who want to update and change the way that they're working, because we're no longer in a position where everyone wants to work and, you know, you've got 1,000 applications a day like we used to have. Now we're lucky if we can find a sous chef or a CDP or a busser, and the dynamics have shifted. So there is a shift. It is massive, but I just think that we need to be promoting those who have done it well, learning from what hasn't gone well, and telling the stories that are positive and proactive for hospitality nowadays.
And you were talking about doing things at colleges and stuff. Do you find the biggest hurdle is, as you were saying, the diversity of our industry? And I think the biggest thing, and I mention this a lot, is that our industry is one of the biggest in the world, yet the government doesn't see it that way. The government sort of can't put a tangible black and white label on our industry because we have so many transient staff and that sort of thing. So they go, well, it's just the hospitality industry. And in Canada, when during the pandemic, and you're getting bailouts for the timber industry and bailouts for the oil industry, and then it's just a dribble to hospitality. And I was like, hey guys, I think you should be really looking at what we do, the GDP. But that aside, like when it comes to you talking about the diversity of the industry, have you had to jump the hurdle of getting that ownership and older leaderships, the guys who have been, the people who have been in the industry for 20, 30 years, like myself, that just are tough to change and tough to change that mentality? I've always said that if you have a high turnover, it's not a staff issue, it's a you issue. And I get so many dirty emails and DMs about that when I'm like, they're like, no, it's not me. I'm like, you have 80% turnover. It could be you. That higher up leadership, it's easy not to get people when they're nice and green and impressionable, but how are you changing that like thick bark of old leadership in the industry?
Wow. Yeah. So our organization is incredibly multifaceted, and the way that I built it is there's a number of ways. So we hit the grassroots level so that the young generation who come into the sector are more aware of what they should be asking for and what they should expect. We work with the C-suite to be able to make sure that actually, if you want to look at ROI, fine. We'll do all the stats and work out your return on investment and show you how much money you're losing because you're not focusing on this as a matter. where the leadership and some of the older heads of the sector come into it, it's quite interesting. And again, we're seeing a big shift there, which is, I remember, I think the Michelin Guide once put out something about the mental health trend or something similar to that. And I was like, that pretty much summarizes what we have to deal with.
It's right beside the trend of that new herb that they found in France that everybody should be using now. It's the exact same. It's the exact same mentality.
Yeah. It's like when vanilla pods replace tonka beans. You know, it's like it's a trend. It will die out. But we are seeing a shift. And in the early days, I had to step away from training. We've got a massive training team now that operate around the globe, and I remember I got into quite a heated debate in quite a reputable restaurant with a chef, because he was like, oh, stress is all in your head and mental illness is all in your head. Like, you can just think your way out of it. And I was like, what? So something that was biologically built into us and has been there for like hundreds of thousands of years is made up now, is it? Interesting. Okay. However, we are seeing a change, and the way that change is happening is similarly to if you start working in an environment and that environment has a really terrible culture and a really toxic environment. It's funny how that can rub off, you know, and maybe you'll conform to that way of thinking or that behavior, or you'll leave, right? That's what I'm kind of working on with this, which is we are working on such rapid scale that you either conform in the nicest way and learn more about this and learn how to be more rounded and more respectful of human beings, or perhaps it's time for you to consider another career or retirement, because there is no place for any of that toxic masculinity or bullying or harassment or any of that anymore. These are professional working high performance professional working environments, and they need to be treated as such. So if you get things done through fear and aggression, it's not going to work for you long term. So if you care about your profit or you care about morals, either of those two or both of those combined, then you should be looking at this as a subject matter and start to learn more and be better.
Yeah, and I think I just turned 45 last year, and I get grouped in sometimes when I'm talking to people of my same sort of age and experience, and they sort of like, oh, you know how it. I'm like, no, I don't know how it is. I don't know how it is. I've evolved over the last years. Like, I came from an ex-military father, so I grew up very like, if people hit the floor, I'd be like, you've got to do table 16 now. And they're like, no, hello, no, how are you? And I'm like, no, get to table 16 right now. And I would never do that now. And you have to evolve because your staff evolve. And if, again, I agree with you, if you're not evolving, you're not keeping up. And if you're not keeping up, well, you're kind of going to become extinct.
Yeah. I mean, just from a fiscal business point of view, it's the way. And you're totally right. And listen, look, we all make mistakes, right? You handle a situation wrong and you've upset someone, or you haven't managed the situation correctly, or maybe you've said the wrong things at the wrong time. We are human beings. We experience high levels of stress, especially in this sector. Sometimes we say things that we don't think about, our emotional awareness goes, but that doesn't make it acceptable. Also, you shouldn't be chastised over it. You know, if it's a genuine mistake, hold your hands up and go, look, I apologize. I didn't say hello to you when you walked in today. That's not the culture that I want. And I'm trying to be better, and own it and be understanding that not everyone works in the same way as you. Don't do it and then keep making the same mistakes again, because then you just seem like an absolute, you know, I'm not sure if I can swear on this. So
you definitely can.
Okay, you seem like a complete dick, you know, but we have to evolve, and it's okay to have made mistakes and it's okay to have fucked up. But ultimately, the big overarching theme here is that when I speak to hospitality professionals who are desperate for people to come and work in various roles, they tell me how great a career it is and how great they are to work for. And the question that always clinches it for me is, I say, have you got children? And they say, yeah, I got 2. I was like, brilliant. When they're able to work, would you let them work in this environment? And they go, hell no. And I'm like, then there's still work to be done.
Yeah, for sure. Let's get into 2026 because we're in the first thing, and I do, as I said in the intro, I try and bring some value for people in the first month of the year to really understand like where they should be putting their focus and their energy into for 2026. What is one non-negotiable habit that you feel that every hospitality business should be adopting to protect mental health in 2026?
One negotiable habit is shut the fuck up and listen. For so many different things. Like, you have to listen. You have to listen to your team. You have to listen to the numbers. You have to listen to feedback. You have to listen to your gut instinct as well, which often we tend to override in the service of others, right? You have to listen and actively listen and pay attention, because all the information that you need, you don't need to donate loads of money to us as an organization. You don't need to, we don't need to consult for you. You just need to listen, because your people are telling you everything that you need to know, but you just have to be open to it.
What do you think 2026 is going to look like as an industry-wide? Any changes that you're hoping will click in, or changes that you see are going to make the move as we continue? Because the industry is obviously getting populated now with the next generation, which it's a very different generation to a lot of, it's a big jump in technology, especially post-pandemic, where a lot of these young kids spent 4 years of like their formative getting into adulthood years locked in a house, and now they've all of a sudden like have to come into the workforce. How are you seeing 2026 for mentally healthy businesses sort of pan out?
That's a big old question. That's a huge question. How am I seeing it? I think first and foremost is listen to what your teams are saying. I think that they'll give you a lot of information, and you can start to build and formulate ideas and strategy, and have those individuals along, create committees within your workplace to say, look, what we're doing well, but what can we do better? Make sure that the education's there. I mean, again, there's no excuse anymore. The Burnt Chef Project offer a free online academy with 26 modules to do with menopause, neurodiversity, drugs, alcohol, suicide, sleep, breath work, you name it. You don't need to pay us a single penny. You go on there and you use it for free. So learn more about these subject matters, and it will allow you to be more effective and more better at creating a safer and healthier environment. I think understanding that not everyone has the answers, and that's okay, but just being able to listen and provide a safe space. And it sounds so cliche, and I keep saying it, but it's not about, in an industry that can sit at a table of 20 when they've only booked for 4, or sit at a table when they've turned up for their meal and it's not booked for 8, but it's at 6 o'clock. We're very, very good and adept at problem solving. But some things don't need problem solving. They just need time and attention. And even if it's for 5 minutes, just sitting and being present and connecting, which is what everything about hospitality is about, is creating connection, right? There was something else that you mentioned as well, which I think is really important, and I'm going to drop it in, which is digital technology. And I think that there is an over-reliance upon technology now in an industry that's human-focused, first and foremost, and people-focused. The overuse of digital technology from commercial purposes is harming your retention rates and harming the productivity of your team more than you can even possibly begin to realize. An example I will give is WhatsApp groups or Telegram or chat groups. When your team have finished their job and they're no longer on the premises, because let's face it, you can't remote work if you're a mixologist, right? Don't be contacting them. There is no reason why any organization should be contacting employees when they are out of the workplace. Because as soon as you do that, they're back into work mode. They don't get the rest and recovery they need. And also, if you're having to contact employees whilst they're off, getting time off so that they can perform at their best for you, it means that your training plans, your inductions, your education, your business is built on shaky foundations. So find those holes, find those questions and text messages that you would usually send, and backfill them with making sure that people are multidisciplined and making sure that people have the confidence and the skill set to be able to cope with these. And so I think from a safety and a healthy point of view, it's also looking at actually, yes, just because technology exists doesn't mean that we have to overuse it, and certainly when it creeps into people's personal time. So there's some things that will create healthier and more balanced workplaces with sustainable workforces.
Fuck, I'm guilty of that. But maybe it's because I'm always open. I'm always available to my team, and that's my unhealthy thing. That's just my way I work. But fuck, I am guilty of that now. I feel really bad.
But acknowledging it is the first part, right? You have to acknowledge it and then look to change it. Like my team know that if they contact me after 5 o'clock, they won't get a response. And sometimes I'll be working because we work in every time zone around the world. So this week I've started at 6 o'clock in the morning, and my last meetings have been sometimes 9:30, 10 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean my team need to be working. And I also doesn't mean that I have to be a hero or a martyr. I'm not proud of this, and tomorrow I'll take half day, or I'm taking myself off to Sweden for this survival week because it's a recce for a fundraiser, but it's selfish for me because I won't have a phone. I'll be in the middle of the Arctic and north of Sweden, and I'll be off. And it's important to demonstrate to your team that you are not a robot. You are not always on. You don't have to be contacted 24/7. And those are healthy boundaries to have, whether that's technology or just always being available. And it sets the precedent moving forward because they then learn and then they pass that on to their people and so on and so forth.
That's awesome. So we're at the end of the podcast, and at the end of every podcast, I do 5 deep podcast questions. Every guest gets these. What is one lesson or experience that has shaped your perspective the most, and how do you carry that forward in your life, personal or career?
The most profound one for me is understanding that human beings have limitless potential. I was a sales rep and a sales manager for a food wholesaler. I was happy with my salary. I was happy with what I was doing. But actually, and I didn't even know how to register a company, pay taxes. I didn't know how to do any website design or creation or branding. And now we have an organization which is we have registered a 501c in America. We've registered a CIC in Canada, and we're about to start work on registering a charity in Australia as well. I am now, I don't know what the correct term is, global president of an international charity within less than 7 years. And none of this I knew how to do beforehand. So the profound thing for me is that if you're feeling comfortable, push your comfort zones, learn a new skill, learn a musical instrument, learn a new language, read books, listen, because your potential, people just don't know how much they're capable of. We create a narrative for ourselves, which is, I am this person, and this person is who I'm going to be for the rest of my life. But that's not the case.
If you could leave one lasting message or piece of wisdom for the world, what would it be and why?
I think we're sharing the same hunk of rock. It doesn't matter about race, religion, sexuality. None of that matters. It matters from a respectful point of view, but ultimately we're all human beings and we're all sharing the same piece of rock. And I think that live your life with moral clarity. Do things that help, just one thing a day that helps someone else, whether that's helping someone cross the road or paying someone a compliment. Pass on this, because now more than ever, and certainly since post-COVID, we see this anger and this angst and this locked in mentality where you're in your own head and that's the only head that should matter. But actually there are millions of different stories going on around you at the same time, and you don't know what someone else's day is turning out like, and that one thing could completely and utterly change their day or save a life.
Looking back on your journey, what is something you wish you had understood earlier in life?
What do I wish I'd understood? I didn't until I recovered from mental illness in my early 30s. I didn't really know what I was doing with my life. I was just taking jobs, performing very well, driving a nice car and earning a good salary, and I thought that was it. Um, I I've always pushed myself. I've always done physical activities and boot camps and things like this. But I wish I'd started earlier. And do you know what? Again, kind of similarly to the last question, is the profound thing and the thing I wish I'd done sooner was not listen to what other people have said, because they're not that they're wrong, but their perspective is limited to their experience. So when I started the Burnt Chef project, a friend of mine told me I was a fucking idiot and there was no way, and I should just stop now and save myself and get out of the sector. Had I done that, we wouldn't have impacted so many thousands of lives across different countries. So always take someone else's opinions on board. But then if your gut's telling you to do it anyway. And whether it's a success or failure, doesn't matter. Pick yourself up and dust yourself off, learn from it and go again.
How do you define success, and has your definition of it changed over time?
Yeah, it has. So when I was employed, my version of success was how much money could I earn, what nice clothes could I buy, and could I keep my 5 Series BMW, which was my pride and joy. When I came home and I told my family I was quitting my job to start the Burnt Chef project and take a 60% pay cut, it all changed from that moment. And success for me is legacy. It's ensuring that we continue to help save lives and improve the sector. And so that at some stage when my children are older and they turn around and go, my dad's left a mark on the world. And, I think a lot of people think, well, he's in the non-profit sector, being a CEO, he's probably got like a 17-bedroom house, but it's not like that. Like, I live on very, very meager means. I earn probably the same amount as I did when I was full-time employed. But for me, it's not about money. I don't need flashy things. I mean, for God's sake, today's probably the first day I haven't worn a Burnt Chef hoodie in like yeah.
I only wear my own branded hoodies.
Yeah. I mean, clothing is cheap. Clothing is cheap for me, and my wife hates it because I've got Burnt Chef boxers, Burnt Chef socks, Burnt Chef hoodie, t-shirt. She's like, for God's sake. But it's not about it, and I don't care about accolades or what other people think of me. Providing I know in my heart I haven't deliberately done something to hurt or offend someone, none of that stuff matters. It's all just society's way of being able to try and keep you in some sort of level. But success is, even on a daily basis, can I make someone else feel heard, listened to, or better? And I know what this sounds like. It sounds like this guy's, he's a preacher, and he's going to turn himself into a monk one day and go and live in Tibet. But it's not about that. We are all connected. We're all human beings. And yeah, when money's dried up and gone and all we've got is each other, right?
The last one, you sort of answered in this one. What do you hope your legacy will be, and what steps are you taking to build it?
Yeah, so legacy, and this is the interesting thing, and not many people, well, in fact, no one knows this outside of my internal team, but I was saying today that 7 years ago, I had an idea. 7 years in the present day, that idea has become a reality, and there's still a lot of work to do there. But where we are as an organization and working with affiliates across the globe to set up charities and stuff, I've suddenly realized that actually, whilst my work is still there in terms of driving change, there's going to be a lot of other people now who are all driving changes in their own countries under our banner and helping us spread the word and support more people. And so my legacy is that those charitable organizations trading as Burnt Chef Project USA, Burnt Chef Project Canada, etc., are all performing well and delivering impact. And I don't know where that leaves me, if I'm honest, because they'll be working well, and they'll be seeing the vision out. So that would be, I guess that's my legacy. And my
but
God,
also a really massive hurdle that you mentally have to do yourself.
Yeah, it took me a long time. For years I wanted to say, well, no, we can work in Australia and we can work in the different time zones and Dubai and Canada and all these other countries. But in reality, it's hard. No organization can work 24 hours a day with the workforce, and it's not right for the workforce to do that, and for my team who have supported me so massively. So yeah, it's a hard one, because it's like, you create this baby and then you have to not give it away, but just watch it walk out the door, and it's 7 years old and it's not old enough to like look after itself yet. But this was never about profit. It was never about ego or accolades. It was about creating meaningful change. And so I have to be humble and set it on its way, really, and be there just to nudge it back on course if it needs it. But yeah, so the next 12 months, it will be very interesting for the Burnt Chef project. A lot of cool announcements, a lot of more international expansion, and yeah, and then a big black hole afterwards. I don't know what I'm going to do if it all goes well.
Well, Kris, thank you so much for your time, man. I'm glad that we got to connect. It was a fantastic conversation, and I know that anyone who's listening to this right now is going to have a ton of value out of it. So I really appreciate your time, my friend.
Thank you. And if people need to find us, there is only one Burnt Chef Project website, so it's burntchefproject.com. From time to time we see other ones pop up and we quickly shut them down, but yeah, burntchefproject.com. So if anyone wants to learn more or access any of the therapy, life coaching, relationship advice, or educational resources completely free of charge, it's there for you. Don't be shy, go use it.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much, friend. I'll chat to you very soon. Thanks
Cheers.
a lot. Bye. All right, post shifters, that's it for now. Keep your standards high, your spirits neat, and your team tighter than your pork costs. Catch you next week on the Post Shift Podcast.